everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kim Bussey. I am the Key Relationship Manager here with Omnia. Want to do a quick sound check. If you can hear me, at the top of your screen, there is an icon with a hand raised. Go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear me. This will also be if you agree, disagree with anything I say. If I need to speak a little louder, speak a little softer, speed up or slow down, just let me know. And of course, laughter and applause is always appreciated. Also wanted to let you know that we are recording this webinar. So if you have to step away for a moment and want to come back, or you love it, want to share with someone on your team, the recording will be up in about a week on our YouTube channel. And you can also follow us on our social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and get some great notifications. So before we dive into Interoffice dynamics, we had a little poll in our waiting room. And we're seeing that overall, when you're describing your Interoffice dynamics on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being we're one big happy family, everyone gets along, to please don't make me go. We're seeing about 63% of you are. Every road has an occasional pothole. No biggie. We work together well, but we all hit our ups and downs. And what we're going to talk about today is some of those ups and downs. And we're really going to focus on it again, where we see in our 30 years of experience of between sales and service. So whether you're an insurance agent that talks about producers, or you are a sales organization, or maybe you're an office who you say, we really don't have sales versus service because we don't have a sales culture. We're going to talk about that today because it all boils down to those interoffice dynamics. Why we all get along, and then sometimes we just feel like, okay, the wheels have completely fallen off of the bus. So when we look at this, we see this picture and we think, oh, this is our ideal work environment. Everyone's working together in harmony. We've got a lot of times, this is what we walk into, especially as a leader, a war zone, right? There's these arguments about what department is better. If you're going through a merger and an acquisition, what we feel is, well, we bought them. Why do we have to adapt to what they do? Well, all we are is this redheaded stepchild, so to speak. They bought us, and now we just got to, fall in line with whatever you've chosen. And I know that there's some audio issues going on. Just taking a quick segue. Sometimes logging out and logging back in solves those audio issues. So if you haven't done that, tried that, go ahead and try that. If not, it is being recorded. But going back to the war zone. So some of the things is who contributes more to the bottom line? Why is that department better? Even when it comes to organizational changes, right? Why do we have to do it that way? So I want you to take a moment and really think about your office environment, your team dynamic. And I want you to think, go ahead, it is anonymous. Let's go ahead and write in some of those basic, what are some of your challenges in your office? Maybe it is just that, as a leader, I struggle with motivating those who are different than me. And it shows. Maybe there's favoritism. Maybe it's something as simple as I see that. Others power tripping, a sense of entitlement, diversity. Oh, we see things coming. Wonderful. Keep sharing. Diversity is a key item because we want to have that diversity. We want to understand what's going on, but then at the same time, it's how do we maximize that diversity while all coming together. So we see a negative attitude, not my job, jealousy, moody, a lack of respect, complainers. Whoo, they're coming fast and furious. Trust. Seems like they're too busy to help. So now we're seeing that there is definitely this complete lack of coming together. I like that. Micromanaging each other, and they're tattling on each other. Isn't that difficult when you see that when it's one team and they're tattling on each other, or they're talking about their team among other teams. And now we've created this classic confrontation cliche where, you know, if you watch Big Brother, they have alliances that form to vote someone out of the house. And now we've got alliances within our company, right? So they are coming together and they're talking about another company or even another employee. And now they're trying everything that they can, if not to make them leave intentionally, but to make them very uncomfortable. And it is very clear who the outsider is. And, you know, and sometimes it isn't open. It's that general air of tension. What we're really going to focus on is about those natural behavioral traits that cause the difference. And as I said, we're going to focus a lot on sales and service. But if you don't have a true sales team, don't sign off and say, I'm done. This isn't going to help me. Think about it as whether you have a front office versus a back office, client facing or team members that support, because those tensions are still there. So tell me what you see. Type in the chat box below with this picture. I'm not going to give you any hints yet, but go ahead and just quick glance. What do you see? Okay, so we see a frog on a rock, a horse, a frog in an eel. So we're starting to see the head of the horse. I like that. The frog waiting to jump on the next fly. So we're seeing a lot of frogs. We're seeing some horses. So think about it. So if you don't see the frog, the head is facing towards the left of the screen, and it looks like he's sitting on a lily pad. The blue is the water, and you see some, it looks like maybe some grass or some weeds that are flowing behind it. That's with you looking with your head straight. So if you tilt your head just to the right a little bit, now the horse's head becomes a little bit clearer. Where it's a very sideways view, what you thought was grass is now the mane. You see the ears that look like the frog's back leg, and the frog's face is now the horse's, you know, nose and mouth. And I love that someone said, oh, I see a horse now. Because at the moment, whatever our first inclination of what we see, we're like, oh, yeah, that's a frog, hands down. And then when someone goes, oh, no, it's a horse, you're kind of like, what? Not quite sure what that is. A lot of that happens within your office. So if you think about it, we looked at this picture with different perspectives. We all had our own filters on with what we saw. And as soon as we saw the obvious, that's what we typed in. It's a frog, it's a horse. What does it look like? But when we begin to look through someone else's perspective, then we begin to see a very different picture. And what we find is that with those inner office dynamics, that happens quite a bit. So many times employees are stuck in seeing the picture, the situation, the task through their own lens. And our brain naturally filters out anything that's not important to us. So if you're talking to your sales team, what they're looking at is that I need to bring in the revenue. When I bring in the clients, that's what makes the company successful. Everything needs to revolve around that. If you're talking to the service team, they're saying, yeah, you can bring in a new client, but if I don't cover your mistakes and make sure that policies are written correctly, that the customer is happy, that the orders are going out, that when they call in, I'm offering them the support that they need, they're going to leave. And if they leave, where does that leave the company? So when we start talking about that dynamic office environment that starts moving on all four cylinders, they're all going in the same direction, we first have to understand what are the different behavioral traits, and most importantly, stressing with yourself as the leader and with your team that those different behavioral traits are all necessary for success in the company. It's making sure that you have the right person in the right seat and that they're performing to the top of their abilities, but also that they see the contribution that other people are on their teams that are making. It's critical that we begin to look at other people. But this is what we typically see. So your sales team, your salesperson says, I drive the business. I carry the team. I have people to see, goals to meet, and deals to close. We've got to bring in the business. If we don't bring in money, then the doors are going to close. Yes, that's true. But here's how your service or support team sees it. Those salespeople, I don't know why, but they are so demanding. They feel like all I'm doing here is sitting coffee waiting on them to bring in the new client. They're unorganized. They always wait to the last minute, and then when they do close a sale, I have incomplete information. So now I've got to call this client, and their first impression of me is that, oh, we need more information. I've told them we need this information. Why can't we get it? Which one is right? Which one is wrong? Well, there's probably a little bit of truth in both of those thought processes. Yes, we need our sales team to go out and bring in new business and drive that, and they are very busy. A lot of times their pay structure is very different than someone who's in support. But the support has very valid thoughts with, yes, they do wait to the last minute, and a lot of times the information is incomplete. Why is that? Because the same behavioral trait that makes a salesperson resilient to rejection and criticism and allows them to think outside the box to close a sale is also the same behavioral trait that says, details aren't always important. Let me just get the top facts and let's move on with it. How does support see themselves? Well, if you talk to someone who's in service and support, this is what they're going to say. I support the team and keep our clients happy. I solve the problems and also keep compliance happy. It's very difficult when you have an upset client who needs help, and yet we've got to make sure they're happy while still protecting the company and remaining within the guidelines. Critical. But how does sales see service? Well, they look at it like this. Those CSRs, they're just too picky. They want every I dotted and every T crossed. And when I tell them something, they can be so touchy. Well, you didn't tell me to do it that way. And if I need it now, all they do is complain about me waiting until the last minute. Why do they take forever? And defensive? Whew. And good Lord, a lot of times I can just do it myself faster because they ask too many questions. Don't they know I've got the signature? Really? They need 11 sets of initials and a signature. Why? 10 sets of initials. Why does it matter if I missed one? Raise your hand if any of this sounds familiar, whether you've said it yourself or you've heard someone in your team say it. Okay, so I see hands going up all over. Good thing is for those of you that are on the call, you are not alone with dealing with this team dynamic. Love this quote by Steve Jobs, and it said, "My model for business is the Beatles. There were four guys who kept each other's negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the total was greater than the sum of the parts." That's how I see business. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. And the reason why I chose this particular quote is that we know the Beatles is this amazing musical group. They've spanned decades. Very rarely will you hear someone who doesn't know about the Beatles. But I love that Steve Jobs is the person who said this. And this is why. Steve Jobs was the founder of Apple. He created it. He is iconic as that, as that leader of innovative, the iPod, the iPhone, the Mac. But he was fired from Apple. They fired him after a few years because, and yes, it's the company he started, because he wasn't that team player. He was disruptive. He couldn't run the business the way it needed to be run. And in an interview that he did after coming back to Apple and really creating this, they asked him, what was the thing that you learned about being gone from the company? And this is what they said. He said, I learned that I needed to focus on the things that I was good at and set a great team of people around me that could focus on those things that I'm not good at. So he goes, I love innovation. I love people. That's what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on crunching the numbers. I don't want to focus on looking at the balance sheets. And so he hired some executive teams. He delegated a lot of the things that needed to be done, and he focused on his strengths. His appreciation for the rest of the team came through a very tough and difficult time in his life. I can't imagine how he felt for being fired from his own company, from his baby, so to speak. But he learned from it and grew from it. And that's what we as leaders need to understand, that as we're looking at our team dynamics, our job, one of our jobs is to really coach and open the eyes of our employees to see that they balance each other out. They're going to have strengths. They're going to have negative tendencies. They're going to have those areas of opportunity. But together, the sum is greater than the total, or the total is greater than the sum of the parts. Because you can have a great salesperson, but if they can't keep people happy, then you're not going to have repeat clients. If you have great service and a salesperson that promises something that can't be done, that sale may never happen. So when we look at sales versus service, there's some key behavioral traits that are different between successful salespeople and successful people within service roles. So successful salespeople tend to be play to win. They're proactive, they're fast-paced, they're resilient, they're big picture visionary. All the things like, tell me what the deal is, let me go make it happen. Whereas your service is that perfect counterbalance because they're more of that detail oriented. They have structured follow up. They're supportive. They don't necessarily want to be the person out knocking on doors or calling, cold calling, but they want to help the salespeople. They accuracy and compliance is critical, and they're very patient and thorough. Sometimes that patience and thoroughness is frustration after a while because they're being rushed to do something and they know that it's not being their best jobs. So I think for the first thing to take away with as we talk about interoffice dynamics and sales and service and why can we all get along is to one, make sure that you have the right person in the right seat on the bus. Because a lot of times we'll hire someone and say, oh yeah, they can do this job and they're the right person, they fit the culture, but they're in the wrong position. Or you have someone who's been in that position for a long time and they think by right of tenure that they should move up. A lot of times this is, oh, I've helped with customer service, I want to move into sales. Maybe what they're seeing is dollar signs or just a new challenge. But then you move them and they don't have those skills that are necessary. And it's going to cause stress for both the employee and you as a leader. And then also taking it one step further is a lot of times we promote people because once again, I've been here forever. They know everything that's going on. So they're going to be great managers. Are they top salespeople? And so that must make them a great sales manager. Not necessarily. So when we talk, but that's another topic for another day. So let's go back and I just have a quick question for you. So one, I want you to think about how does sales contribute to the common goal? So if you think about your common goal in your office and go ahead and in that upper left-hand corner, write about how sales contributes to that common goal. Maybe you're thinking more along the lines of service and support. So if you're still thinking about sales or don't have anything right now, then you can jump down to service and tell me how you think service contributes to that common goal as well. So we see sales contributes to the common goal with money. They bring in the clients, they increase the business, they make the sales revenue, overall company bottom line. That's right. We need the money, right? So we're seeing they bring in new clients, they increase revenue, it's income, it helps the bottom line and name recognition for the company because they're not afraid to go out and network. And I love that. So, sales provides our office revenue to allow us to properly to employ proper service staff. Absolutely. But when you look at how service contributes, so we're seeing They keep the clients happy. Revenue. Exactly. So service can produce revenue, return customers, happy customers, keep the business with the company. A lot of times people will stay with companies based on the employee that they're working with. And a lot of times you will see that if a salesperson jumps to another salesperson, then another company, they'll take their clients. Same thing with service. So stability to our inner office, establishing those long-term relationships. So we're seeing this correlation about how they all contribute to the bottom line. But does your sales team understand what the service team does? And does your service team understand what the sales team does? Because if you sit down and start having those conversations, and I would recommend in the next team meeting, talk to sales and say, sales, we want you to list a couple of things that, we need from service that helps you do your job better. And then the same thing with service. What does sales do to help your job better? Oh, well, they start explaining things. They plant some seeds for us to follow through. Whether it's expanding the relationship as a service person where you're increasing that share of wallet, or just making sure that they're happy, is desperately needed. And as a leader, a lot of times we see that, and as we see right here, is that we know what's going on. You see that, depending on your industry, I love that. Sales feeds the back end in the automotive business, but not much upfront revenue. But service is the cash cow. So repairing the products that the sales team sells, and helping ensuring the customer comes back as a repeat sales customer. Those are critical. So think about it. Thank you so much, Jim, for putting that into an industry specific example. So in this particular, in the automotive industry, sales is great. We need it, but service is that cash cow. That's where the main bulk of the revenue comes from. And it allows you to understand that. It allows you to begin to understand the synergy. And as a leader, you have to lead your team to understand that they have to work together. Because the common goal at the end of the day is that sales plus service equals happy customers. And your happy customers are going to be engaged. Then they become your brand ambassadors out in the community. Word of mouth is everything. A happy customer is going to tell about 3 people about what went well. An unhappy customer is going to tell about 10 people. Now, when you think about it, a happy customer tells 3 people what a great service that they received, and those 3 people go out and tell 3 people, and those 3 people go out and tell 3 people, then you've reached quite a few people, right? Word of mouth referrals. But let's look at it at the reverse. If you have an unhappy customer, whether it's because they feel like maybe they got the bait and switch through sales, and that service isn't where it needs to be, then they're going to tell 10 people, and those 10 people are going to tell 10 people, and those 10 people are going to tell 10 people. So while you may have, at the end of the day, close to 100 people that have heard about the happy experience, you're going to have closer to 1,000 people who've heard about the unhappy expense. And we've all heard this statistic that it costs about 5 times more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain one. So yes, salespeople may generate more revenue in the beginning, but without service, it may become more of that one and done sales versus a long-term relationship. And even here at Omnia, we've been in business for 31 years. We work with that. With our clients, we have a great sales team, but one of their selling points is our client advisor team, that customer service, to know that they have those analysts that they can talk to talk through our behavioral assessments and really understand it. And because of that excellent client advisor team and that service, we've had customers who have been with us for those 31 years. And they will tell you, oh no, I only want to work with Tanya, or oh no, I only want to work with Cynthia, or they have their list. Okay, Kim's not here. Let me reach out to Joanna. We get that the common goal. Can our service team, if we ask our service team to bring in new customers, they're going to be like, no, not really. That's not my thing. I'll talk to my existing customers. I'll introduce new products. I'll even ask them on occasion for a referral, but I don't want to go to trade shows. Please don't make me do presentations. No, I don't want to do this. if we ask our sales team to stay inside and say, okay, for the next 2 days, you're going to be resetting passwords and walking people through websites and answering questions about their reports, they're going to be like, yeah, no, no thanks, not going to do that. I'm out of here. So as a leader, your responsibility is that you set the tone of the office. And that may be difficult, especially if you have you relate more to one side or the other. So maybe you are that salesperson that's come, have those sales traits and you're managing service. You've got to learn how to adjust your style to maximize the potential of your service team. Or you are that service person and you're managing salespeople now and you're thinking, good Lord, it's like, trying to manage a herd of cats going in 14 different directions. I've always got to constantly bring them into the non-negotiables. So this is for you. As a leader, there are a few things that you have to do. One, you have to recognize the individual strengths and challenges. Even if they may be in a sales role, salesperson A may be a little bit different in salesperson B, especially in the way that they communicate. You've got to look at those potential obstacles. What's keeping them from reaching their goal? And those need to be internal challenges, areas of opportunities. Not necessarily, I want better pay, better technology, and better hours. And understand their motivators and demotivators and how you as a leader can relate to that. Then you want to make sure that you're holding everyone accountable. I worked in a bank for 10 years, and something that was said to me when I was first starting off has stuck with me throughout my career. And it was our security officer, and he said, you have to inspect what you expect. If you expect your salespeople to have those non-negotiables with certain details, you need to inspect it and you have to hold them accountable. I don't care if they're producing $2 million a year or $2 a year. They have to be held accountable. And then your job with that accountability as well is to facilitate that conflict resolution. As we talk about some of these strengths and challenges coming up, you're going to see that. You're going to see where some people are more or less just adopt and take care of those conflicts immediately, while other people are going to be like, maybe not so much. Your job as a leader is to recognize that tension and then facilitate conversation. Maybe it's through some team dynamics and some workshops and some exercises and team meetings. Exactly what I said. Hey, sales team, give me 3 things that the service team does for you that you can't live without. Service team, give us 3 things that the sales team does that we can't live without. Because as we start focusing on the strengths, we're going to see less on the challenges. And if it's between person to person, then it may be that let's come in, let's have a conversation about it. And then as a leader, you have to communicate. So this is key. Communicate your vision of the office, what you expect team dynamics to be, what the common goal is, where do you want to go. And just when you're tired of stating what that vision is when your team is just about to get it. So don't think, okay, we've talked about this for 6 weeks in a row, it's over with. No, keep it front and forward. You want to communicate the expectations, not only your expectations of a leader, of everyone individually, but also as departments and as teams, and what can they expect from each other. And then give feedback, not necessarily just constructive feedback, but also complimentary feedback. So if you see someone doing something great, let them know. You may find that that is something that is outside of your comfort zone. It's an area of opportunity for you because you're that leader who says, you know what, if it's not broke, I'm not going to say anything. And, unless I have a problem, you can assume that everything's good if we're not talking. That could be a demotivator for some of your team. So, one, understand who you are as a leader. And if you don't, now we've got a great leadership report that talks to your strengths and challenges as a leader. And then make sure that you're giving consistent feedback, not just to your top performers and not just to your bottom performers. So a lot of times we focus on the top 20% or top 10% of top performers because we want to keep them happy. And then we focus on the 10% of our worst performers because they're the ones that are driving us crazy and always making the mistakes. But then the 80% in the middle, there are meat and potatoes. sometimes they get neglected, and we want to make sure that we're giving them that same feedback as well so that they can begin to grow and to help and address anything that's going on before it happens. And at the same time, they're not going to slip into that disengaged or that 10% of those bottom employees. So let's talk about some of those strengths and challenges of each side of the team, keeping in mind that common goal. So strengths, just defining that as a team is a group of people coming together towards a common goal. So sales, they are goal oriented. They play to win. They're proactive. They're resilient. They're fast paced, big picture visionary, very assertive, comfortable taking some calculated risk. I'm going to knock on a door. I'm going to pick up a phone. I'm going to walk up to someone and say, hey, do you want, what do you think about this car? How can I help you? They can overcome those objections easily. Your strength of the service and support team is that they are team oriented. They're collaborative. Tell me what I can do to help um, reach the goal. So your sales team is goal driven. It's more me. What can I do to reach my goal? Your service and support is more of what's the team goal. They're still goal oriented. They know what the common goal is, especially if you're casting that vision. And they're going to come up alongside and say, I may sacrifice my personal goal to help the team reach their goal. They're patient and thorough. So they're going through the reports. They're understanding, making sure the process. Detail oriented. They have that structured follow up, which is critical. So a lot of times with sales, as they are so fast paced that they may miss some follow up. So that partnership is support is going to be able to be there to remind them. And then once again, especially if you're in a heavily regulated industry, insurance, banking, healthcare, you want to make sure that someone is there making sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, that compliance piece is there. If you're in the automotive industry, the same thing with services. They're going to be collaborative. And what you're going to want to do is give them some information and some structure on how to make recommendations because they want to make sure that they are really partnering not only with the client but with the company so that everyone is happy. Now, some of the challenges that each individual department brings to the team is that for sales, they hate routine. The sale's taking too long. So those long-term goals, details, staying within the guidelines. They really want you to tell me what's my goal and just get out of my way. And that structured follow-up. Sometimes they overextend themselves. Oh yeah, I can take care of this for you, Carrie. Oh, I promised Sarah something. It'll come back to me. Especially if they're outside of the office. So you want to stress with them, use their organizational resources. For challenges to the service and support side of things is adapting to constant change. So that could be really working with multiple salespeople at one time, which will create that high pressure environment, or if the organization is constantly changing. Thinking outside of the box, they operate and they self-manage very well within the guidelines. But if you're taking them outside of the guidelines, they're going to struggle with that. They don't operate well in the gray. And then proactive calculated risk taking. I'm going to add another challenge right here that's not on the PowerPoint, which by the way, this presentation is available for download at the end of our webinar, is that conflict. So usually that's sales. So that same natural behavioral trait that really helps and lends for a salesperson to be assertive and proactive, comfortable taking with calculated risk, also leads them to want to address any type of conflict right away. Hey, Carrie, feel like there's some tension between us. What's going on? To them, that's not necessarily conflict. But for a service personnel, because they are team oriented, they're more collaborative, they're helpful, they want to stay within their calculated, within their comfort zone a little bit, they adopt more of a wait and see mentality when it comes to conflict. So if I come to Carrie and say, hey, I feel like there's some tension, what's going on? If she's a hire two, she may take that as conflict. Uh, no, nothing's going on. And even if something was bothering her, she may or may not say anything, depending on what the issue is. And that can be a big challenge because a lot of times the sales team will be like, "Well, I'm trying to work it out," and they're not saying anything about it. And your service personnel isn't quite ready for that. We do have some webinars that talk about conflict as well. To give you some ideas, check them out on our YouTube. Because it'll give you some clear ideas on how to facilitate those differences of conflict resolution. So as a leader, how do you manage? So you do want to manage to the department, and we do see with our 31 years of experience some common denominators, but never lose sight that you're managing to the individual. So you want to give them, you know, for sales, define non-negotiables needed in the role. If you can tie that into performance metrics, especially incentives, that's going to be key. So if they need those 11 sets of initials and a signature, then they need to have that. If it's in the automotive industry and they need to make sure they have driver's license information before they can move forward, let them know that. Give them the latitude to reach the goals. They want to think outside of the box. If you have an individual on your sales team that is thinking too far outside of the box, you may want to bring them back in, reel them back in and say, hey, what's going on with this? Why are we doing that? Nope, that's a little bit too far out there. We need to get back to where we want to be, and so you reel them back in. For your service side of things, you want to empower them to really recognize the gray and guidelines. So for myself, as I said, I worked in the banking industry. I had to really focus on, we had our written guidelines, you don't refund insufficient fund fees, but I had to let the team know, okay, let's talk about this in the gray area. Yes, we charge $6 for a cashier's check, but do we really want to upset a client for $6? Let's make an exception for them. Yes, we lose a little bit about the fee income, but I don't want someone going out and talking in the community about a $6 fee. Now, if they ask for it all the time, that's a different story. But the first time, let's work with them. Also, you want to recognize contributions to the team goal. So a lot of times when you look at sales, your salespeople want to know my individual. What do I do? And so they're motivated by things such as individual goals, money, bonuses. Your service and support, not so much. They want to look at their team goals. So look at your team incentives and really focus on how can I celebrate the individual contribution to a team and recognize the team. So maybe it is that you take the team out for dinner or you bring in lunch. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial. It could be something, a jeans day, or going back to diversity of them being able to bring in and once a month you have a potluck and you celebrate, the difference in foods and cultures and understanding that. But as your service support, as you motivate them and give them recognition to the team goals, what you're going to really allow them to do is to understand overall, how do I contribute? And I don't want to let my team members down. So I'm really going to give as much as I can because I don't want to disappoint Kim. And if I don't do my part or do a little bit more, then what's going to happen is I'm going to look at it and go, oh, well, I'm the reason the 4 other people didn't get my call. I need to bump it up a little bit. And then you want to offer consistent job relevant feedback. So your salespeople, a lot of times you can pat them on the back, say great job, and they're like, woohoo, my take is full. Or when they come in and say, hey, I just closed a great deal, you're like, yeah, high five, they're out. They're already moved on to the next thing. For your service side of things, many times they want some job relevant feedback. They don't necessarily need to be recognized in front of everybody, but they do want to, great job means nothing to them. So when you're talking not only for you as a motivator to each other, but for your sales team, if they have a dedicated service staff or someone who's really supporting them, telling them, hey, give them some job specific information, some feedback, and that's going to mean like more to them than that, just that, yeah, you're doing a great job, because they feel like basically there's no truth in it. Any questions so far as we start moving through this? And maybe you're thinking right now, yeah, Kim, that's great, but really I expect my service team to sell, and my sales team does have to have some service. And so where do we go from there? That's not uncommon. Once again, it goes back to having that right person in the right seat, but we also offer some great and amazing development report. So we offer a sales style. So if you have a salesperson who's selling and maybe they're not where they need to be, you give them a sales development report. Or your customer service, your service side is expecting to sell, maybe you give them the sales style. It talks about their strengths, their challenges, how they're going to sell, some areas of development. We also offer that for service as well, and I mentioned the leadership styles. So just because someone is in sales, but they have some service, give them that customer service report so they can see how they're going to excel in servicing the account, but where they may have to have some additional work. And I'll use myself as an example. So for me, I am the classic sales personality, that very assertive, proactive, comfortable with calculated risk, relational, fast-paced, big picture, just tell me what you need to do and I'm going to go do it, right? That's one of the reasons why I love giving webinars and talking with people, because I like to be with people and like to create my own thing. But I manage our service department as well as a relationship manager. I work with our clients on making sure that they're happy, any special projects. So for me, a lot of times I have to pull down some of that natural, woohoo, and resilience and that motivation of great job team to giving them specific feedback, to really adapting who I am to create that synergy, to be able to say, okay, I see your side of things on the service side, but let's see how it ties in with sales. So we need to up this up a little bit and bring this down a little bit. Sales, what you're asking is stressing out my client advisor team. And so we need to talk about some protocols to put into place. So I get to balance between the two, but I do have some strengths and some challenges. And it took a lot of self-awareness to really be able to understand and balance the line. Do I do a great job every single day? I wish I could say yes. The truth is no, but it's a matter of growing and developing in that some days we hit it outside the park. Some days we look back and go, oh, I wish I could have handled that a little bit differently. But it's understanding that. And I think key for those team dynamics is to really help your team understand that it is more about, it's something so much more than just them. If they're the top performer, they can't be that bully in the office. They have to be able to pull down the power trip, so to speak, and the ego, and to really recognize that they're where they are through their hard work, but also because they have a great team behind them. And I love this quote by Phil Jackson. If you know anything about NBA basketball, he coached the Chicago Bulls for many years during the height of Michael Jordan. He was with the Lakers. And his quote is, the strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. So once again, with the team, we all bring up, each individual on your team, whether they're in sales, service, or leadership, bring some key traits, bring some key strengths to the team. And no one person is the total package, consistently. They may be able to sell, but sometimes service suffers, or they're great at service, but their sales suffers a little bit. So rare is the person who can do both consistently at an exceptional level. And that ties directly into the second part of that quote, is that the strength of each member is in the team. So I know that when I have a great team, I have someone that offsets my lack of attention to detail. Cynthia knows that she has someone that's going to offset her lack of, thinking outside the box sometimes. And because of that, our team becomes dynamic. It becomes great. But maybe you're thinking, this is great information and I can do some of this, but really I have no idea how to facilitate, how to coach, where we're going from here. Where do we start? You don't know my team, or I've got this one person who thinks that if they leave, that the team is going to collapse. So if that is you, we have a variety of options, from our development reports to, we also offer some in-depth team dynamics reports, on-site consultations, as well as phone consultations. So if you are not quite sure where to go from here with your team dynamics, or you have additional questions, you can type in those questions. You can also email or call me direct. I'll be happy to help you out. My telephone number is there as well as my email. But I am going to open it up to a few questions for you now. We have some time, and just to see what are your thoughts about the team dynamic, sales versus service? Do you see that that's something that can help? And does your team appreciate each other? And I see that we have a couple of people typing. As you're typing, we do have those takeaways for the presentation, as well as some sample reports, but also want to let you know that next month, very excited, we're going to have a series. So 4 different webinars that are going to talk about the leadership advantage. We're going to be talking about things such as soft skills for leadership, how to as a first-time management, and how to develop your team. So it is a 4-week session. So go ahead and click on to make sure in the helpful links above to register for that. So I see like negativity in the office from only one person. It's really taking that one person and going back to, as a leader, recognizing, holding them accountable, and stating those expectations. So one, I would recommend trying to get to the root of that person's negativity. Are they in the wrong position? Are they just not happy? What's causing that? Having some tough discussion with them about, really where is it coming from, that source, and it may happen over time. And then at the same time, holding them accountable to say, yeah, one bad apple can spoil the pie, and we're not going to have that. So here's my expectations of you. And then at the same time, going back and saying, we need to have a discussion on, if you can't reach these expectations, they're either going to do one or two things. They're going to get better and jump on board, and it may include some lateral moves, or they're going to begin to want to seek something elsewhere. And then just making sure that negative person is going behind the manager's back. It's really key to talk to them about the triangle. So if someone's going to someone else, every person in your team needs to be empowered to say, have you talked to Cindy? Have you talked to Kim? Nope, I haven't yet. Well, now here's an area. This is where you need to go. You need to talk to them first. I don't want to be a part of it. It is that once again, and Cindy, you've stated it, we've got to have that clear communication, and everyone is accountable. And it's tough sometimes when it's that top performer who may be that negative person. But here's what you've got to think about is that if you have that person, how many people are they, A, demotivating, and are that you've lost because of that one person? And at the end of the day, is it really truly someone that you can consistently keep? And trust me, I think for myself, the first thing that we should do is really try to work through it and facilitate it. But as leaders, we can't be afraid to make hard decisions. But before you make that hard decision, make sure that you are giving them every opportunity to redirect that negativity. And sometimes it's organizational. There's so many different ways of why someone's being negative. It really comes down to just starting to have some tough discussions in the beginning and addressing behaviors, not necessarily in situations, not necessarily saying you do this and you do that. So any other questions? And then lack of trust, once again, it's facilitating those conversations between sales and service and everyone on your team. So recommend at least a monthly, at the very least, get together of everyone on your team, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or 30 minutes, to say, hey, where are you at? What's going on? Celebrating some wins, and then talking about that next step. And that allows you to also give that consistent accountability and recasting and communication of the vision. So I want to say thank you very much for attending. I don't see any other questions, but if you do have questions, please feel free to email me or call me. Make sure that you are downloading those presentations. And Tanya Devane will be conducting our webinar on October the 6th for the Leadership Advantage. And then I will be back again on the 13th. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day and look forward to talking with you next month. Thank you.